It was a night cloaked in shadows. A thief had come, silent and unseen. Not a man, but something far older, far crueler. It stole the light from the heavens and the hope from trembling hearts. In a forgotten village cradled by towering mountains, a cry pierced the stillness, a sound so raw it seemed to shake the earth itself. That night a child was born, fragile as a whisper into a world trembling beneath winter's icy grip. Above, a shadow circled the sky, black as death, eyes glinting like shards of moonlight. And in that moment, no one could say whether it was a blessing or a curse. The air was bitter that autumn evening, thick with fog that swallowed the stars, whole. The village lay hushed, its wooden homes shivering under blankets of mist, as if the mountains themselves were exhaling secrets. Far from the hearths and flickering fires in a crumbling stone temple perched on a windswept ridge, a young woman named Nera fought for breath. Her labor had come too soon, too fierce, too merciless. The cold bit into her skin as she gripped the ancient pillars, her screams weaving with whispered prayers. The temple, older than memory, stood like a sentinel against the night, its carved stone eagle glaring down from above as if it, too, bore witness to her pain. Her cries echoed, crashing against the walls, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the shadow of that eagle seemed to move, a trick of the torchlight or something more. Beside her, an old sage, his face etched with time, watched with narrowed eyes. "This child is sealed by fate," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering across stone. But what that seal meant, no one dared to guess. Not yet. The baby came at last, a boy, small and frail, his first wail trembling like a thread about to snap. They named him Aren, a word from an ancient tongue meaning the whisper of the wind. But the cost of his life was steep. Nera's strength bled away with him. Her final breath slipped into the dark as her son's cry filled the air. Her husband, Kyle, knelt beside her, clutching her cold hands as tears burned trails down his rugged face. Above them, the sky split open, not with thunder but with the silhouette of a massive black eagle, its wings cutting through the night, its eyes blazing like twin moons. The villagers, peering from their windows, felt it in their bones. This child was no ordinary soul. His story had already begun, written in shadows and starlight. Years unfurled like the slow turning of seasons, but Aren's life was no golden childhood. The night of his birth clung to him like a second skin, a shadow that refused to fade. His right arm and leg were weak, twisted by some unseen hand at birth. He stumbled where others ran, his steps uneven, his hands trembling when he reached for the simplest things. The village children played in the fields, their laughter ringing like bells, while Aren watched from the edges, a quiet figure against the dusk. The whispers followed him too, cruel, hushed words from the lips of those who should have known better. He was born half-made, they muttered. His mother's spirit left him unfinished. But it wasn't his frailty that chilled their blood. It was his dreams. Every night, the same vision clawed its way into his mind. A black eagle soaring across a storm-torn sky, its shadow writhing beneath it like a living thing. And then that voice, low, insistent, threading through his soul like a needle. "Come, the time is running out." He'd wake, gasping, his chest tight, the words echoing in the silence. He told no one at first, not even his father. But Kyle saw the hollows under his son's eyes, the way Aren's gaze drifted to the mountains as if searching for something, or someone. Kyle was a man carved from the earth itself, broad-shouldered, weathered, his hands rough from years of toil. He'd lost Nera, the light of his world, and now he watched his son slip further into a mystery he couldn't grasp. One frostbitten morning, when Aren was 12, Kyle made a choice. He bundled his son in furs, hoisted him onto his back, and set out for the deep woods where Elder Valen dwelled, a man of secrets, a keeper of forgotten truths. The journey was brutal, the wind howling like a mourner's wail, but Kyle pressed on, his every step a plea to save his boy. Valen's hut was a crooked thing, half swallowed by gnarled trees. The old man emerged, his silver hair wild, his eyes sharp as flint. He took Aren's trembling hand, tracing the lines of his palm with a finger that shook only slightly. "This boy has cheated death," Valen said, his voice a rumble. "But his soul lingers between worlds, here and somewhere else." Kale's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. My son will live, Valen. Tell me how. The elder's silence stretched heavy as stone. At last he met Cale's gaze. Find the eagle. Without it, he'll never be whole. 2 days they trekked, father and son, through forests that whispered with unseen eyes and across rivers that roared like beasts. The sacred mountain loomed ahead, its peak piercing the clouds, a place the villagers spoke of only in hushed tones. Cale carried Aren when the boy's legs gave out, his own strength fraying with every mile. Aren grew heavier, not just in body but in spirit. His breaths came shallow, his skin pale as the frost that clung to the rocks. Kyle's heart thundered with a father's dread. If they failed, he'd lose the last piece of Nera he had left. They reached the mountain's base as dusk bled into night. The wind sang through the stones, a haunting melody that seemed to call Aren's name. Cale climbed, his muscles screaming, his son's frail form strapped to his back. Each step was a battle, each breath a prayer. Aren's head lolled against his father's shoulder, his voice a faint thread. "Do you hear it, father?" The whisper. Kyle didn't answer. He couldn't. He feared what they'd find at the top, and feared even more what would happen if they found nothing. And then, at the jagged summit, under a sky ablaze with stars, they saw it. The eagle stood motionless, its feathers black as the void, its eyes glowing with a light that pierced the dark. It was no mere bird, but a presence, ancient and unyielding. Aren's body shuddered, a tremor of awe or terror, but when those luminous eyes locked onto his fear melted away. The eagle spread its wings, vast, majestic, and soared into the air, circling once, twice before descending to perch on Aren's trembling shoulder. A searing heat erupted in Aren's right arm, a fire that raced through his veins. Kyle stumbled back, his cry lost in the wind, but Aren stood firm. His fingers twitched, then curled into a fist. His leg, once limp, pressed into the ground with newfound strength. The eagle's weight was a gift, not a burden, and as its talons gripped him, Aren felt something awaken, something that had slept since the night he was born. The pain faded, replaced by a rush of life, of wholeness. The eagle launched skyward, a dark arrow against the moon, and vanished into the night. Aren exhaled, a sound between a sob and a laugh. His father fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, not from sorrow but from a joy too vast to contain. They returned to the village at dawn, Aren walking beside his father, his steps steady for the first time. The whispers ceased. The ones who'd called him half-made now averted their eyes, not in scorn, but in reverence. The boy who'd been a ghost among them was now something more, a miracle, a mystery, the one chosen by the eagle. Nights passed, and while the village slept, Aren would slip outside, his gaze tracing the sky. The eagle was out there, a shadow, among the stars, watching, waiting. He knew it wasn't finished with him. One day its call would come again, that low, relentless whisper. Come, the time is running out. And when it did, Aren would follow, into the dark, into the unknown, wherever the wind's whisper led. For now he stood under the moon's pale glow, whole at last, but forever marked. The eagle had given him life, but it had claimed him too. And the listeners, like the villagers, could only wonder, what destiny awaited the boy who carried the shadow of wings?